sometimes when I tell people I'm from Springburn, they make a joke about it, or they say something, or they go, "Oh,
Yeah.
better watch where handbags and all that," and I'm like, get f***ed.
Today's episode of the Glasgow Memories podcast contains adult themes. Audience discretion is advised. So hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of the Glasgow Memories podcast. I'm Frank McGowan, and today I'm with the amazing Andrea Keaney. Andrea, hello, how are you?
I'm brilliant. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you for joining me. We're outside of the studio today. We're in a new location. We're doing an outside broadcast and OB. So Andrea, just for the listeners tuning in at home, if you would like to start by just telling us how you came to Springburn, why you came to Springburn, and why you chose to call the North of Glasgow home.
I had this whole wish list of stuff that I wanted from my own place. I showed it to my mum and she burst out laughing. I wanted period features and I wanted high ceilings and I wanted a flat, but I wanted a main door on the flat and I wanted a back and front door because I've got 2 cats, and I wanted a separate area for working, but I had a very limited budget, and that's why my mum was pissing herself laughing. She said, you're off your head, what are you doing? You're never going to get all that, so you need to cut that down. And I said, well, we'll see. So I started looking, and I looked in different areas. I looked in Garahill, I looked in a few places, and I found what I was looking for in Springburn. I had everything that I needed and more. It was next to public transport. It had a basement at the front and back door. It even had a utility room. And I'm like, this place is absolutely perfect. It was a wee bit out my budget, but I just knuckled down and I made it happen. And I've been here for 8 years.
You were saying just before we started the podcast that when you tell people you're from Springburn, you get a reaction. I know it's a good reaction sometimes.
Yeah.
It's the same for me when I tell people I'm from the North of Glasgow. I'm from Garahill, and when I tell people, the way they look at me, it's like I'm carrying a knife, or that they're going to hear stories about me growing up with bombs going off around me and how my granny used to carry a hammer in her handbag, but it's just not the case.
Listen, it could be grannies doing DIY. We always jump to conclusions here that they're going to be going and stoving people's skulls in, but it could just be that they see fences and they think, you know what, I'm going to carry a spare hammer in case there's a wee raggy nail and you don't want a kid to get hurt.
Exactly, community improvement. And speaking of community improvement, you are actually quite active within your community here in North Glasgow. You're actually setting up your own community improvement organisation. You're on the community council and you work quite closely with a number of other local organisations within Springburn and the surrounding areas. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the work you do, how you became involved in the community, and the work that you and your team actually are focusing on right now?
I first got into doing stuff for communities 2018. I was running a trade union campaign, and that's when I really got to see that if you have conversations with people in the council and you start to engage people, you can really move things and make a difference. Just walking about my own area, I could see that there was a lot of stuff needing done. The litter was becoming more of a problem. People weren't feeling safe. So I started reaching out to local councillors and asking, when do you do walkarounds? Is there stuff that you're just not seeing? How come there's no action being taken? So I had a few conversations with Thomas Rannikin, and he said, what you need to really do is start getting involved in more community events, community organisations, and really start to figure out, what needs done, what opportunities there are available, etc. So he introduced me to Helen, who I'd met many years ago through a different organisation that I was a part of. And we started talking about what are the big needs that are here. I could see that Helen was taking on a lot of work and she's an absolute powerhouse. And I really wanted to contribute to that. I saw that there was a group in Easterhouse, and it was an area called Denmillan, which used to be quite run down, and they'd turned that around from a place that people didn't really want to visit to somewhere that is actually quite a lovely, nice, friendly, clean, tidy place to be. So I wanted to know how they were doing that, and I contacted the person through Facebook and she invited me up. And walking around the place, you would never have thought that place used to look like the way our Springburn can do in some different areas.
So where do you think your appetite for change comes from?
I've always had a bias for action. I've always been an action taker, and I have started the Springburn Action Group.
That's brilliant.
We've called it SPAG, so SPAG for short. And this is the only reason I called it Spag, is so that we can do a big social event once a year and call it the Spag Ball.
The Spag Ball. I love that.
It's all about action. It's about getting out there, getting your sleeves up, getting your hands dirty. It's about actually doing it. Okay, I'm not going to walk past that lane and moan about it unless I'm prepared to do something to change it. That's what I've done so that I could buy my house. That's what I do if I'm going to the gym and I'm training. You know, nothing happens unless you take action.
I heard you in action last night at the community council meeting. You were kicking some spag balls there. And I suspect that's always been there. So if you don't mind, for the listeners, if we just go back maybe to childhood, where you grew up, where you went to school, and let's look at some of those earlier memories of Glasgow.
I started off in Garahill and I lived there until I was at the end of primary 1, and I went to Garahill Primary School. Then we moved to Mount Vernon for a year and I went to Mount Vernon Primary School. And then we moved back to Garahill. So then I went back to Garahill Primary School until halfway through primary 7. And then my parents split up and I moved to Hag Hill and I went to St Denis's for half a year. And then I went to St Mungo's secondary school on the Gallagate.
So you've moved about a bit?
I've moved about 27 times, I think, in my life.
Wow.
I think what used to happen in my household, and people maybe identify with this, but my parents would have an argument or they would have some sort of disagreement or fallout and they'd go, do you know what it is? It's this fucking house. It's this house.
My mum and dad used to say the same.
And we'd move.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was that house. And then it was this house. And it was the next house. And I'm like, surely it can't be all houses that's causing this.
My mum and dad, they weren't that proactive. They just decorated 50 times a year.
We had that as well. Yeah, my dad went away to work and he came back and my mum had spent all his money on antiques. With some French chateau and my dad went, every one of them's gone back. You've spent everything, you've spent every penny in the house. We're going to move. And that's how we ended up moving back to Garahill again. Because she'd spent all the money. She decided she wanted a guest house, which didn't ever. My dad put sinks in every room and then we moved. When I think back to it, I'm like, Jesus Christ.
So Andrea, growing up in Garahill, what places did you like to play or, hang out with your pals? What sort of adventures did you have? What sort of childhood was it? And what are some of your earliest memories from, school?
Absolutely brilliant. I mean, it was the kind of place where it was safe. Your neighbours all looked after you and you looked after them, and there was a neighbourhood watch and all that. So everybody looked after each other's kids. There was a woman, I'm saying, she was like a woman to me, but she was probably about 12 or something like that, right? Because she just looked older. It was Leslie Blair, her name was. And she used to come round, tap the door and ask if she could take my wee sister out in the pram. So my mum would literally hand her the buggy with my baby sister in it. And she'd go out and walking up the park. And so it was that kind of safe area where if something happened, it was a big thing, And at my school, I had one best pal, and that was Emma Jordan.
Shout out to Emma Jordan if you're listening.
And I had a few other wee pals. There was Dion Hamilton, who was she was head and shoulders taller than anybody else in the school. And then there was Leslie Mackenzie, who had screaming ginger hair, and she hated Brussels sprouts. That's the two things I remember about her. I think she lived with her gran as well. And so it was all of us that used to kind of pal about and stuff.
Do you remember any of your teachers?
I remember our teachers were very, if you didn't say the word "the" right, they'd be like, put your tongue between your teeth. So it was like one of those kind of schools where they taught you how to speak properly and conduct yourself properly. I mean, I lost all that when I went to Hag Hill because I had to fit in somehow and I didn't want to be speaking like a wee posh girl and then getting my head kicked in. So
yeah, I get that. It was the same for me when I was at school. I mean, not that I spoke quite a wee posh girl, but well, actually I did, but that's another story. So what's one of the most vibrant and kind of, solid in your mind memories from back at school that you remember?
I remember being one of those squealy wee lassies, the ones that squeal in the playground. It's like actually burst your eardrums. And there was this big clearing that you weren't allowed to go into in the shrubbery in this school. And me, Dion and Leslie went into the shrubbery. We were in the menties, we were eating our play pieces. And we were singing that song Saturday Night by Wigfield. And we're doing the dance and all that.
Absolute classic.
Absolute classic. So we're going back quite a wee while here. I'm 40 this year.
You're not. Shut up.
I'm 40 at the end of November.
I literally thought you were 28.
I know, Botox. So we're in the bushes, the shrubbery, and this wee clearing. It was absolutely stunning. And then my two pals just went very, very quiet all of a sudden. And I'm like, why are they quiet? And I'm still singing away. And then I stopped and I turned round. I could feel somebody looking at me, and it was Mrs. Cowan, and she was terrifying.
She put the cow in Cowan?
Absolutely, yes. And she had a shaved head and all that. She was terrifying.
In my head, I've got a picture of Uncle Fester for the Adams family wearing a stereotypical 90s teacher's jumper and a skirt.
Oh man, she stunk of fags and she was raging all the time. So she was standing behind me and she didn't even shout at me. She just spoke to me in a whisper. Honestly, it still makes my bumhole clench when I think about it. Like, even this interview, I'm like, right, remember what you're saying and don't get too loud and blah. Like, all those thoughts come back up. It's weird how these things end up forming things later on.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I got a wee bit older, my mum and dad split up and we moved to Garahill, and it was a Catholic school, and I was the only kid in that school who'd never been baptised. And I walk in supporting Rangers. I speak funny. I had big giant ears, horrible fuzzy hair, massive eyebrows, a wee bit of moustache, and I just didn't fit in with anybody. And I didn't know anybody because there's no internet at that time. It was quite scary, as well as, like, I was in an area where people were setting fire to cars in my street, and there's a drug dealer next door where you fling a fiver through the door and a bit of hash gets pinged out. Even the dogs were hard. There was a dog called Dougal, and he used to sit in the middle of the street, and vans would have to get on about him because he wouldn't move. He would just sit there, hard as nails, and kids would go out and fight with each other for a laugh. So I was like, I need to fit in here. So I started becoming a bit of a clown, started being quite self-deprecating, quite funny, and finding ways to make people laugh and entertain. I came from a school where if you were intelligent, you were cool. So if you knew stuff, you were cool. To if you knew stuff and you were intelligent at this school, you were getting your head kicked in. you were a square, you were this, you were that. I would say what I needed to say to try and fit in. Like, if you smoked, I smoked, and if you drank, I drank. And if you smoked hash, I smoked hash. Then I'll maybe reduce my chances of getting my head kicked in. I was still getting the grades and all that, but very quietly, under the radar. Don't tell anybody that you're smart, kid on your daft.
It's literally a survival technique. I did it myself. I had to hide the fact I was good at certain subjects at school, that I was creative, good at drawing, make my own movies, write my own scripts, things like that. And the fact that I wasn't actually kicking a ball about or smashing windows like the other guys at school made me stand out like a sore thumb. And if you were different, you had to learn to hide it because it meant you were trying to say you were better than everybody else. And a lot of my mates actually had to sneak in through the back garden just to hang about with me on a weekend because, like, at school they would get slagged off on the Monday because it was weird, it was gay, it was this, it was that. And then by association, they were gay, they were this, they were that.
Why do we do that to each other? Why do we tear each other down?
I know.
If I hear kids or I hear anybody speaking really intelligently about something, like, I love making a big deal of it. I'm like, this is brilliant. Like, tell me more about that. I want to know, and I really celebrate that. And I think when I have kids, I need to fucking get a move on right enough. But when I have kids, that's something that I'm going to foster in them, is just like, forget what anybody else thinks. Just be smart if you're smart. Be good at sports if you're good at sports. Be just whatever it is, be it 100%.
So, Andrea, what did you want to do when you were at school? What subjects were you kind of, the best at that you really enjoyed? And what was your kind of vision for when you grew up? What did you want to actually, do as a career?
I love science. Science is my thing. Science and technology. I was good at maths, good at problem solving. I wanted to be an RAF fighter pilot. That was the first thing I remember wanting to do. I seen it in the telly, and I seen the advert and the planes going by, and I'd watched Top Gun, and I was like, that's for me, man. That's exactly what I want to do. And I told my mum, I was pure excited. I was like, I know what I want to do. And she's like, what is it? I went, I want to do that thing on the telly. I want to be a fighter pilot. And she went, oh, you can't do that. And I was like, how? What do you mean? How can I not do it? And she went, it's only men that can do that. They don't allow women to be fighter pilots. See the injustice that I felt in that? Couldn't get my head around it. I didn't know what it was called at that time or what was forming in me and in my brain, but I think that was quite pivotal in my life to hear that. My belief is that all women are powerful. All people are powerful. It's not like some are and some aren't. Power is only the ability to create results. That's all that refers to, right? It's nothing magical. It's just, can you take an action and cause a result? Therefore you're powerful. And it's really as simple as that. Hearing that it's only men that can do it, I was like, nah, no way, I'm not going to be confined by those rules or constrained by that belief that only men can do certain things. If I want to be a plumber, I'll be a plumber. If I want to be a welder, I'll be a fucking welder. And if I want to be a fighter pilot, I'll be a fighter pilot.
I'm so surprised to hear that from somebody so young that that's been said within your lifetime.
Move over, Tom Cruise. There's a new Top Gun in town.
You're listening to the Glasgow Memories podcast. Stay tuned to hear more from Andrea Keaney about life growing up in Glasgow, her journey into entrepreneurship and coaching, and how she lived the real Coyote Airplay lifestyle. She also reveals how she overcame her own hardships, mental health issues and addiction after life-changing news which she received during her studies at Glasgow University. We'll see you after the break. Today's episode of the Glasgow Memories podcast is brought to you by Recyclebike, restoring pre-loved bikes to find a new lease of life in the community in Scotland. With a passion for outstanding quality and value, and helping to create new employment opportunities via their workshop project, come in and browse their huge selection of bikes in store for yourself on Alloa Road, Stirling. You can also find Recyclebike on Facebook and Instagram to see some of the amazing work they do. Recyclebike are an Oscar-listed charity, registration number in Scotland SC036713. And now, back to the show. You're listening to the Glasgow Memories podcast. I sat down with success coach, entrepreneur and adult entertainment professional Andrea Keaney to talk about her work to unionise sex workers in Glasgow during lockdown, bring about positive change in the community in North Glasgow and cleaning up her local area in Springburn.
I saw that there was a group in Easterhouse which used to be quite run down, and they'd turned that around from a place that people didn't really want to visit to somewhere that is actually quite a lovely, nice, friendly, clean, tidy place to be. So I wanted to know how they were doing that, and I contacted the person through Facebook and she invited me up.
One of the most impressive things about Andrea is her passion for action and ability to create positive change for the greater good. In part 2, we explore pinnacle moments in her life which changed the trajectory of her story, allowing her to ultimately find herself, her voice, and her passion for community. So Andrea, moving on from secondary school, what kind of jobs did you have after leaving school, and what sort of things did you try to find your kind of path, education and career-wise?
So I started working before I even left secondary.
Nice.
I started in first year. I saw an advert in the paper for selling macaroon bars and coconut ice, and you could have your own wee business. So I thought, I fancy that, I could do that. So I borrowed money off my mum. The guy came round and he gave us boxes of stock that we had to buy off him, and then I took loads of them in my school bag and I used to sell it at lunchtime. I would use the money that I'd got from selling the chocolate bars and stuff, and then I'd go in and I'd buy 20 fags and I'd sell fags.
Singles?
Aye, I'd sell singles. So entrepreneurial, man.
But I have to say I've got it in good authority that wasn't actually your very first career. Do you want to explain a bit more about the seeds?
I found a wee, you know those little packets that you used to get from the jewellers when you maybe get a repair done, you get your stuff back, and they would give you a wee tiny pouch and your chain or your ring or whatever would be in it.
Yeah.
So my mum had one of them, and on the outside was printed like pictures of jewels and rings and those kind of things. So she'd left it in a drawer with sunflower seeds in it. I'd just been to see Jack and the Beanstalk, right? I was teeny. I was in primary school. So I'd found this wee thing and I'd put 2 and 2 together and come up with about 48. Took the packet out the drawer. I took it into school and I said to everybody that I had seeds for growing jewels, and people were giving me their tuck money. And I went out and bought loads of cola bottles with it, and I was like selling these seeds, and my mum got a phone call for the school saying I'd been taking people's tuck money and selling them jewel seeds. And my mum's like, what is going on with you? So that was the first time that I remember like getting out and making money and having a wee business. But then when I was 15, 16, my mum got me a job in Celtic Park.
Oh, nice.
I was working just flipping burgers, and I was going to be a team leader. And I was the only Rangers supporter in there as well. And then my mum met someone, she'd split up from my dad and met another guy, and he got me a job in a taxi office. So I was doing all the football matches, plus I was working night shift in a taxi office. In the taxi office, I was doing like a 10-hour shift, and I was getting £15. Not a lot of money at all, but I got a wee bit of work experience there. And then when I left school, I started college, didn't really get on that well with it. That just wasn't for me.
What was it you studied?
I did a hospitality management course and I just wasn't in it at all. So it was all kind of catering, and then I got into sales. I worked in bars as well. So I worked in Trash, I worked in Privilege, which was next door to Bonkers, and there was a back door you could get into Bonkers if you finished early enough, which was quite good. I worked in retail, so I worked in Phones for You for a while, and I was doing the whole like out with a whistle and doing all those mad hand signals from the adverts and stuff. It was mental. I never really got on board with making other people money. Wasn't into it at all.
So moving on to your work with Megara Fury, how did you actually enter the industry? I know to begin with, I think you'd said that you had some pretty negative ideas about the industry to begin with until I think it was one night you were out with your friends.
I was working in a car garage at the time, and the guys from work were like, we're going a night out, do you want to come out? So I went out on a night out with them. We were sitting in the taxi and they were like, right, do you want to just go to the Chicken Dippers? I thought we were going for food. And they said, no, we're not going for food. We're going to the strippers. We're going to Seventh Heaven. And I was like, oh, no, definitely can't do that. I'm not going there. Like, that's disgusting. It shouldn't be happening. And they were like, oh, fucking lighten up. It's not what you imagine it's going to be. But I was still like, I'm not going. And they said to me, look, come for one drink. That's it. We think you'll like it. So I was like, okay. So I was getting there with my face like thunder, thinking I'm going to fucking hate this. I was determined to hate it. You know that when you've pre-decided something?
Yeah. I'm
going to hate this, and that's what I'm digging my heels into. So I get in the doors, and the minute I was in the doors, I was like, oh, I fucking love this place. This is amazing. And I've seen all these girls walking about with the big heels and the beautiful hair, and they were all just stunningly gorgeous. And it was all sparkly and over the top and brilliant. And I just thought, this is magical. We walked downstairs into the main bit of the club, doors opened, brilliant music playing. There was a mega strip happening, so we were all hanging off the bar. It was like Coyote Ugly. And I thought, this is brilliant. So I'm sitting having my drink, and I could see the girls going over and just saying, do you want to dance? And the guy saying no, and then them going on to the next guy. And I thought, I would do that different. Like, I would probably have a bit more of a conversation and treat this like a sales, because you're trying to sell something.
Yeah.
So I phoned up the club the next day and asked them if I could get a job, and they said no.
That is not where I thought that was going.
They were like, have you ever danced before? And I was like, no. Well, no.
So what happened?
I went and did a couple of dance lessons, really focused on the stage, and she showed me how to do hook leg spins. And she's like, the best thing to do is just watch what other people are doing, see what moves you like, incorporate them into your dance, get a 3-minute routine going. So I went in 2 weeks later, done the audition, got the job. I went up on stage, I had to dance to one song, take my top off and all that. And they says, we'll take you on, but we're going to keep you off stage for a couple of months. I was like, well, there's my ego in the bin. And they actually did keep me off stage for a few months till I get better. But the girls taught me, they showed me what to do and how to make my routine better. So I went round the world, just dancing in different places and checking out other countries, and it allowed me that freedom to go and do that.
That's brilliant.
My pals used to joke, like, you're never in Scotland for longer than 6 weeks. Like, you're always away, you're always doing stuff. And then I ended up moving to Dubai for a little while, and then I moved to America. I lived in Spain for a little bit as well, and I loved it. I was working in the strip club one night, and I was talking to a guy who knew of a dominatrix looking for somebody to train. I didn't really know what a dominatrix was. He was talking about a guy getting spanked on the stage, and he said, you know, my mate does that for a living. She does really well for it. And I said, oh, I could do that. I could spank arses for a living.
So what else happened in that next section of your life?
I went to university, and I started studying at Glasgow, and I was doing geology, which I've got a degree in now.
That's amazing.
At the end of that degree, I found out that my ex-husband had shot himself.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Degree went out the window, dropped out in the middle of honours year, because I was just like, I don't know how to handle this. It was really difficult. And that's when I started. I wasn't really that fussed about booze before that, but I started drinking. because I was like, I don't know how else to get through life. It was too sore. And I kind of fumbling my way along things. And I thought, thank God for being a dominatrix. I had the flexibility that if I was having an off day or I was really struggling, then I could just move my session. You know, nobody's going to shame me for not getting into work or say you've had enough sick days. Grief doesn't have a timeline, does not have it, neither does trauma, and neither does your mental health. It tends to not behave in that sense. Like it does what it's going to do. So thank God I was self-employed, because if I wasn't, I don't know where I'd be. Really, what was going on, I was absolutely struggling with my mental health. Like I didn't know how it was ever going to get better. I had memory loss from the trauma of it. So I was trying to remember stuff that I'd studied in first year and I couldn't remember it. I forgot how to map. I forgot all these different things that I should know because I've been studying it for 3 years. Getting into coaching was a massive thing for me, because that was the first time that I'd ever went back to studying and going back to doing something that might actually challenge me, like intellectually. I was scared that I'll never be able to retain it. I'll forget things straight away and I'm not smart anymore. And that's going from somebody that regarded herself as being very, very astute, able to focus. So I started studying hypnotherapy, neuro-linguistic programming, and then coaching. And I did it at just the right time because the pandemic hit and it shut down my dom business. I was also running a trade union campaign to keep strip clubs open. So we won the trade union campaign, and I remember when I first started my coaching business, I'd set myself a financial target and a numbers target of how many people I wanted to bring on in the next 3 months. And I told another coach, and they said to me, oh, it's a bit of a pipe dream. Like, you're never going to do that. That's unrealistic. And I had that voice ringing in my head every single time I signed somebody new, and I phoned them.
Well, do you know, maybe that's a lesson to them, that maybe they can do it as well and, think outside of their own mindset.
Yeah.
You obviously do a lot of focus work and you're very disciplined. What gives you that focus and drive? What gives you that power to go out and create change?
Having an ex that killed himself. I'm very attached to doing things that's bigger than me. With somebody in the bridge the other night going to jump off.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank goodness you guys got him down and got him some help.
Like I said earlier, we're all powerful. How are you going to use that power though? Are you going to use it to do good, or are you going to use it to destroy?
Absolutely. We all have a choice.
Like, I'm very aware that what we do makes a difference.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people using their power to destroy. There's graffiti, there's people pissing in a lane in front of kids, there's bottles getting smashed, there's bins getting burnt, there's all of these things happening, and I'm like, it's the same energy. In fact, it probably takes less energy to go out and do something nice. You'll feel better. You'll not be hating the world as much. Maybe your neighbour doesn't hang themselves. Maybe somebody feels like, do you know what, this place isn't so bad.
It's funny you mention that, because I remember this one time I was at the bus stop and I was kind of standing, and this wee woman kind of said hello, and she kind of looked up and was chatting. I can't even remember. It was nothing particularly significant, and after a couple of minutes she burst into tears, and I was like, what's going on? And she was like, do you know, son, that's the first conversation I've had in nearly 4.5 years. And this is before COVID. This was long before COVID. She was from our community here, like down at the Cairn scheme. She was like from a big community, but all her pals had passed away. She'd lost her husband, she'd lost her daughter and her son. She was on her own. You're so surrounded, but yet still so on your own. And she says to me, do you know, if it wasn't for you having that wee conversation with me, because I kept in touch with her, I was planning later on that day, I'm going to throw myself off the bridge.
Bloody hell.
We're still in touch. I still check in and every now and again. You
don't know where people are at. You literally don't. It's not like people put a big sticker on their head and say, I'm going to kill myself today so you can go and help them. It's happening so much more often now, especially with the cost of living and stuff. We're already struggling. Let's not make it harder for each other. And I remember having a conversation. I had a best mate, Ian, who was just hilarious. And I remember sitting at 3, 4 in the morning, drinking Jack Daniels with him. And he said to me, see, if you died tomorrow, how do you think you'd be remembered? And he was just asking a wee stupid pokey question. But for me, that was quite profound. And I remember that thought being really, really clear. And I thought, right, I need to actually do something about this. I had to get out of myself and my own life and my own wee bubble and go and look at how can I be useful? How can I make a difference? I decided, right, I need to go and do something. That's why I ran the trade union campaign. And that was my last drink. Stopped. Next day, Never drank since.
That must have been massive for your mental health.
It's been massive for my mental health. Huge.
So what people in early life do you think were quite prominent influences to who you are today?
So a couple of influences were really massive for me. One of them was my Auntie Lisa. She showed me how I didn't want to be. She was very, very beautiful. So guys just wanted to know her and wanted to be around her. But she would spend every weekend sitting in the living room floor crying her eyes out over some guy because he'd cheated on her or he'd done this or he'd done that. And I thought to myself, well, sag that.
So yeah, final question, what advice do you have for anybody out there who's got an idea, a business idea, wants to take it to the next level, wants to do something, move something in the community? What advice would you give to them to get something done?
It's easy to think that the whole world's happening to you. Choose what it is you want to do, because you don't need to do big, giant, grand gestures. The time's going to pass anyway. So is the time going to pass with you sitting in your laurels waiting, shouting at the telly and talking about how things should have been done and this should have happened and that should have happened? Or do you want to pass that time taking action? Let's just be a bit more constructive.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to speak to you and hear your story, and I hope other listeners, other people in there have enjoyed listening in today to the Glasgow Memories podcast. Thank you for joining us, Andrea, and to you guys at home for listening. Join us next time on another episode of the Glasgow Memories podcast, where we will have another amazing person in the hot seat. And yeah, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the socials, Glasgow Memories podcast. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. If you have been affected by any of the issues discussed in today's episode of the Glasgow Memories podcast, please reach out for support from your mental health practitioner, GP or local healthcare provider. If you're in the Glasgow area and are looking for mental health support, check out GAMH, Glasgow Association for Mental Health, online at www.gamh.org.uk for more information on services, including self-directed, one-to-one and peer group support. Breathing Space is a free national telephone number for anyone in Scotland feeling low, anxious or depressed. You can call anytime on 0800 838587 for immediate support, and you're talking to someone in full confidentiality. Check local listings in your own town, area or country for alternative numbers and groups. Stay safe, and remember, we're glad you're here, even if we haven't met yet. Thank you for listening to the Glasgow Memories podcast.